Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. We're continuing with Faescorned and we're on episode 3. I woke the next morning feeling groggy, disorientated, and for a few spare moments, my body forgot what had taken place the night before. Between one breath and another, it all came back in vibrant detail. The handsome warrior, Cuchulainn, my dismissal of his attempts to charm me, his touch, rich with molten, seductive glamour, and the passion that followed. Sighing, I rolled over, reaching out for the man who had chased away my curse, only to clutch at cool, abandoned blankets. The fire which had helped stoke the heat between us had also turned to cold ash. Cuchulainn, I called out, tentatively, cringing at the slight sound of desperation in my voice. I was a goddess of war. I was never vulnerable. No answer came. The cave wasn't very large, perhaps 10 feet high and 30 feet deep, so I knew he wasn't in there with me. That meant he was somewhere outside. I stood, my head pounding, my nerves feeling as if they'd been rubbed raw. Clutching one of the blankets to myself, I stumbled out of the cavern entrance, hoping to find my lover. The sun was bright, piercing its way through the fading mist and thick canopy of oak leaves overhead. Determined to find the Cuchulainn, I climbed the hillside, hiding the cave. Perhaps he'd gone out to capture breakfast. When I came to the top of the knoll and glanced down into the wide valley before me, my heart sank and memory came rushing back with a vengeance. My army of Faelar and the Faelarem men and women I had rallied to my latest cause lay dead, broken and scattered. They were all upon the ground for over a mile beyond my sight. Ravens, desonants of my own realm, circled above, many landing in the field to pick up the carcass and the carnage. I grew utterly still, more of my memory returning as the pleasant after effects of the night before started to diminish. Years I had trained these soldiers, painstakingly gathered, utilised raw glamour to bring the Faelar to life. Hours, days and months, hard work to form any army to regain portion of my territory from my greedy Tuatha De brethren, and now it was all destroyed. I had failed them. I had failed myself. Cold realisation flooded over me then, that raw knowledge that Cuchulainn had used me, seduced me in order to sneak away after I fell asleep to destroy my soldiers. Without my power to aid them, they'd been helpless, camping overnight in the open until our weaker foe dared stand against them at dawn. Dawn was here now, bleak and grey and tainted with smoke, the rusty scent of spilled blood. My paltry enemy would have no challenger to reclaim what they had taken from me now. I fell to my knees, a cavalcade of emotions swirling around my spirit. My heart sped up, my breathing became laboured. Sharp thorns pierced my knees through the blanket I wore as a mantle. I glanced down, not caring, but wondering if it was my fate-done curse finally stirring to life. No, not the dark magic, seeking and wishing to amplify my pain. Thistles. This pale, downy, white thistles of waste of my realm, their bright scarlet blossoms bursting forth from the buds, just like cardinal plumes, matching the heat burning in my heart. A reminder of the sin cast against me, a white flag of truth stained with the blood of betrayal. Anger, white hot and acrid, poured from my soul and fled out, licking at my nerves and throbbing like an infected wound. Anguish drove me to thrust my hands against the ground to keep from falling over. The thistles pierced my palms as well. Ignoring the burning pain, I curled my fingers into fists, my own blood now streaming between my fingers. There, on the east-facing slope, I screamed a long, low-pitched wail. I drew up from the very heart of Ale herself. The ache and rage, the hurt swirled together, faster and faster. The Faeborne magic joined it, stroking it, until it became an almost tangible thing I could understand. Hatred. I hated Cuchulainn more than anything. Not because he duped me, fooled me into thinking he might love me, but because he had shown me something I could never have, and not with my guys. Any feelings of love or joy or happiness were whisked away, transformed into something evil. But now I knew what it was like not to be cursed for a few glorious hours. I had lived, and because that knowledge would make it even more painful than I'd ever experienced, my hatred had a single target. I would find the man who had done this to me, and I would make him suffer as much as I do now. Yes, the darkness crooned, caressing my mind and sending shards of pain through my head. We will seek the black god, and we will make him suffer. Oh, and what delicious glamour he has. Think of the power we'll wield when we have taken it from him. Tears of anger stung my eyes, and I stared numbly across the blood-soaked plain. I learned my lesson, I said to the darkness. I will never let such weakness make me vulnerable again. In the end, I was not the one to kill Cuchulainn, but I had put the path in motion, and I had been there, watching the events unfold. He died tied to a standing stone. When his spirit was ready to pass into Ale's underworld, I took my raven form, landed upon his shoulder, ready to absorb that potent glamour he had once dared to use against me. For the pain you caused me, I pressed into his mind, and for taunting me with what I will never, ever have. I could not tell if he was lucid enough to hear me or to understand my words. On his last breath, his glamour rose like a fine mist, and I breathed it in. The Faeborne magic beside my own glamour, swallowing it like a ravenous beast. When all magic was gathered, I called once, anguished cry of sorrow and regret, then took to the sky, my Faeborne curse capturing my pain, amplifying it to the point of agony. The sting I knew, this torment I could live with, yet I flew on, trying to outplace it, as I sometimes could, in my corvine form. The sudden upwelling of the chatter from my Fela pushed past the deep pool of memories and jerked me back to the present. I shook my head to clear my thoughts, then narrowed my eyes again, the reminder of my regrets, scraping very sharply against my patience. He looked so much like his father. Anger flared, and I demanded my son turn over the little chit he had grown infatuated with. What a fool he was, for he would call it love. What he felt for that girl. If only it were so easy, I thought bitterly. But I wanted her glamour. The darkness wanted her glamour. I'll not give her up, Cadane was saying. I'll fight your failure, and if I win, you will forfeit your claim to Megan. Margaret quoted his claim. He would risk his life for this girl. That primitive twinge stirred in my soul once more, but again my gaze rushed and crushed it before I could even identify it. If they win, I offer you all my glamour in exchange for her safety. After all, I'm also the product of a volatile combination, am I not? And my magic is rather potent as well. The girl cried out in protest, but I ignored her. That might be enough to tempt me, I crooned, my darkness liking the idea of a challenge. You do realise the price of your sacrifice, don't you, my boy? There is only one way for me to get your power. Cadane nodded, his understanding, his expression hard. I know. I swear a blood oath, if I must. My curse flared to life at this statement, the sudden upheaval of power causing my failure to hiss and spit. The instantaneous agony of it drew a gasp from my lips, but I disguised it with a shout, which sounded more triumphant than pained. Very well, my dearest, I sneered. Do give me your oath, then. We performed the ceremony that was needed, and then I gritted my teeth at my son. I called him a fool for his decision, but it had been made, and there was nothing I could do to change it, or change his mind. Even if I wanted to bring an end to this madness, my curse would never allow it. The darkness, more than anyone or anything else, could sense exactly what I was feeling, and the more anguish it caused me, the stronger it grew. As soon as the ritual was through, I opened my glamour, allowing it to flow freely into my transformed Morrigan, now 3 times their original size and primed for battle. Then I stood back and watched as my son took on his own battle shape. The Raistrad, he'd inherited that from his father. Beside me, the girl watched, trapped beneath a protective shield of glamour. I tried reaching out for her. My curse is what wanted it. My curse wanted to taste her hidden power and the turbulent emotions stirring in her soul. But the shield was strong, and it was easily deflected. The sharp jolt was nothing compared to what the Faeborne magic meted out. Bored with watching the girl, I eyed Cadane again, feeling his weakening state like an ache in my bones. That old memory stirred anew. This time, I didn't have the strength to fight it. Unobstructed, it came flooding back into my mind. I had thought my torment was over when Cuchulainn was through with me, but I had been wrong. 9 months after being spurned by him, I bore his child. A child I did not alone want, a son I could not love. Alone in a cavern, a fortress of my realm, I brought him into this world. Reminded during every agonizing minute of that long labour of a man who had been so cruel to show me life, then take it away as if it had meant nothing to him, because it had meant nothing to him. And that's the end of part 3. Thank you for listening. We'll continue next time. Many blessings.